continue on into the digital era, we're more increasingly reliant on these digital platforms. And it's really, really interesting to note that a lot of the digital sector, which was created in the 90s, has no policing nor strict policing till this day in regards to how companies elicit and provide information to the public, which is really disturbing when you think about it, because they're able to prime individuals into what to think, and we're not getting the full story, if you will. Whereas local journalism provided that, because they were able to critique and also become, like Dr. Kirsch said, the watchdogs for society. As I digress, that's the second answer to the second question. But what I wanted to talk about was how in his video, The Digital Disconnect, the Internet and Democracy, he discusses the internet being the fourth means of digital communication, and it's quite revolutionary because it's caused great tension between our capitalist system and model that we use and our democracy, which pretty much sustains our society as a whole. And the reason this is because their structural dynamic and traditions are quite different, yet they're very interrelated. And author McChesney discusses this, and he says capitalism is a economic system model based on the pursuit of private profits, as well as a relatively small number of wealthy individuals and or business members. Whereas a democracy is a governing system, and that prioritizes political equality and is dedicated to self-government. And now his argument posits that democracy is in dire need of democratic infrastructure, and to utilize that digital communications platform to enhance democracy and to address the digital monopolies that currently exist and promote corruption and surveillance in our economy. And most Americans are on board with this. However, it's quite prevalent that our dysfunctional political system prevents that from happening. Now, essentially, the internet was a solution to all of these problems by empowering people and giving them tools that they needed to govern society and further increase competition. However, McChesney alludes to this egalitarian democratic society that has formed in American society in the 90s, because consumers are no longer reliant on these big dinosaur factories, and now they're more able to go online and pick whatever they want, and they're not having to succumb to advertisements every 5 minutes. Now these cable companies, the ISPs, the cell phone networks who dominate the industry and further represent the corruption in our American capitalist system, they were able to profit and make a big buck off of this. And as we see, we're actually more reliant more than ever on our digital systems than back then. So you can see how it's quite scary. And as a result, US consumers now pay a higher increase in phone prices as well as cell phone services compared to our Eastern counterparts. And this is a exact and direct result from the corrupt policies that exist within our systems and allow for maximum personal profits. Now, there was never any debate that the structure of the internet was and is a monopolization, and therefore letting it manifest and be controlled by an oligopoly is not the way to go. Furthermore, McChesney highlights that the three most valuable companies in American capitalism are all digital monopolies, which violates the principles of democracy because it continues to promote and encourage inequalities. And we know these big companies, they're Google, Apple, Amazon, Facebook, Cisco, AT&T. All of these are the main big macho entities of the telecommunication sector. And it's important to denote because democracy has been compromised by the internet, because corporate America and the Pentagon and the National Security Agency has collided and transformed the policing of the internet and the control over the internet. And they're now able to prime individuals and allude to the into their interests by using surveillance and monitoring of the digital companies. This further deteriorates our democratic principles and institutions because militarism models represent an exact model of our capitalist society. And I wouldn't say they represent an exact model, but it's changing into that, which is the opposite of a free society and self-governance. Now, the internet has ended journalism because there is no longer this commercial model of journalism. There is no longer advertising being supported. It's decreasing as the internet is becoming more and more effective and more able to reach out to the masses than local journalism. And we see this because the revenues and the profits made for reporters, journalists, and newsrooms, they all came from advertising. And since there is no longer an increase in advertisements, there isn't a need for them, and there is no income for them to make because of that. Now, McChesney states, by orders of magnitude, we are all in the stage of the digital era where the U.S. capitalist system is in no means to experience this crisis of mass unemployment, stagnant wages, and now automation. And unless there are significant changes in our capitalist economy, then we will continue to undergo huge inequality, if not more. And he references Marx and many great economists of the 19th and 20th century. And one that stuck out to me was I think his name is John Maynard Keynes, who wrote a book, an essay actually, called The Depths of the Great Depression, which was in 1930, almost a century ago, which he discusses that a century from then, that our society will have solved our own economic problems and have little need for the labor because society will have been able to produce everything that we need to sustain our physical and material needs, which is a theory that was established almost a century ago, and it's correct. It's mind-boggling. But anyways, that theory is further correct because the tensions of capitalism have always been duly noted by great economist thinkers as well as McChesney, and political science studies have shown that democracy has deteriorated because of decreased voter participation and interest in politics due to the survival of the fittest.